Good morning, class. So today also I am back with the major English for class 11, and today what we are going to do is we are going to discuss few of the short notes and the long answer questions from this book itself. And on the next classes, we'll be talking about the other books. So today I would present few of the questions for the short note according to the chapters. In chapter 1, what are the probable questions that can pop up in a short note, and what are the questions in chapter 2 also. First, you have this Old English literature. From there, you can be asked about Beowulf, chapter 1, or say the Old English prose or poem. So these things can pop up from chapter 1 and from chapter 2. Chapter 2 is about the Middle English literature, and from here you can be asked about say morality plays, miracle praise, interludes, Geoffrey Chaucer, right? So these are the Canterbury tales. These are the things you could be asked from chapter 2. And from chapter 3, what are the probable things that can pop up in your, that is Elizabethan prose and poetry. So from Elizabethan prose and poetry, you can be asked about, say, the Spenser, the Renaissance in English literature, Renaissance in English literature, say Bacon's essay, these are the things you could be asked from, or say you can be asked about Sir Philip Sidney, you can be asked about Sir Philip Sidney, John Donne. Those are the things you can be asked from chapter 3. And now from chapter 4, that is about the Elizabethan drama. Here we talked about this Elizabethan drama, right? Here you can be asked about Christopher Marlowe, William Shakespeare, and or say Jacobean drama, Ben Jonson, these are the things you could be asked from chapter 4. And from chapter 5, John Milton and his age. You can be asked about John Milton and his famous writing Paradise Lost, or say this one, Robert Herrick, Cavalier poets. Those are the things can pop up from here. Okay, so these are Paradise Lost, John Milton, so actually in short notes what we are getting is the terms or the name of the authors or the prominent literature of the era, right? from the certain topic. Look at here what we are getting. Beowulf, that is the prominent literature of the era. What we are getting? Old English prose and poems, the feature of the literature of the era. What were the proses or the poems like? Morality plays, miracle plays, interludes. Here we are getting the peculiar terminologies from the text. So in this way, we can be asked about the author, or we can be asked about, say, the terminologies, or we can be asked to mention the feature or explain the literature of the time. So in this way, from each chapter, they will pick up the small terms, name of the authors, literatures, and they will give you it to describe. Today, as we already did this Beowulf, Old English prose and poems, right? We know about the Old English. Today we will be talking about these things. What are morality plays, what are miracle plays, and what are interludes. Now, first of all, let's not get confused. First, just say what is morality and what is miracle. Now, morality means the moral codes, what you are supposed to do, what you are not supposed to do, how are you supposed to behave, what to be done and what not to be done, how the things should be done, what should be your behavior. That means morality, right? So these morality and miracle means something of magical attribute, and these magical attributes are always with gods, and these moralities are always for man. So here, with the name itself, we come to the distinction that morality plays were about the saints, the life of the saints, right? Where through the life they presented the allegory to, or say, to teach the normal or the common people about the moralities. It was the, say, these plays concerned the life of saints. And now here we say miracle plays. These were the plays performed in cycles, okay? And these type of miracle plays were from the Bible. These are the allusions from the Bible. Say the life of Mary, okay? Life of Jesus himself. These are the things which were performed those days. And these were not performed in stages. Rather, they would have a moving stage. And they would take that moving stage throughout the town. And those performances were performed in cycles. Okay? So these are the miracle plays. And in between those intervals, they used to perform short, funny plays. And those plays are called interludes. So now we know about the morality play, miracle play, and the interludes. Inter means in between. So interludes, the plays that come in between, the gap, okay? So now these were the very short plays. Miracles are always associated with gods. So these plays are in concern to Bible, biblical stories, right? And morality plays are the plays which are based on the lives of saints, and they are meant to teach the moral codes to the common people. So this is how we write the short note, and say this is asking you the terminology. Here it's asked about the literary person, the major feature of the genre, okay, and also Bacon. So this is how we will be asked about the questions. Let's write some of the major questions that have been popping up in the examinations, okay? So after this chapter 5, in chapter 6, just couple of minutes, let me check the old questions. Okay, in the 6th chapter, You have the probability of being asked. Sixth chapter is about restoration drama and prose. Here, you could be asked about comedy of manners. Comedy of manners, or say heroic plays. Yes, John Locke and many other names like John Dryden. Right? And then All for Love, or say Thomas Ottaway, Richard Sheridan. These are the prominent writers, and you can be asked about these writers too. And now from chapter 7, we will discuss all in detail, but today I'd like to give you the questions first. And then from chapter 7, there is a probability of being asked about Pope's poetry. Okay, this is Pope's poetry. That was the rape of the lock, say, the rape of the lock. So they can ask you the Pope's poetry, or they can ask you the rape of the lock. Any one can come in your question, or say William Blake. These are the writers, okay? And now you have William Cowper. So you remember the writers and just know about a few of their major writings and the typical literary style they used to present on. So don't forget to mention these three things if you are asked about the writer. The era when the writer wrote, and the genre which the writer wrote in, and what was his style of writing. These three things should never be missed. You should mention when you are asked about the writer. We'll do it, but first let's get the questions. And now, in the 8th chapter, you have Daniel Defoe, Robinson Crusoe. Robinson Crusoe or Daniel Defoe. Daniel Defoe, or say you could be asked about Samuel Johnson. The famous was Gulliver's Travel also. Gulliver's Travel, or say the Edward Gibbon, Samuel Johnson. These are the prominent writers. So these are the prominent writings of the era. Okay, Robinson Crusoe, Gulliver's Travels, and this could be asked from Jonathan Swift, or you have Edward Gibbon. These are the things that could pop up here. Okay, let's say Gibbon. And now for the chapter 9, we come to early 19th century poets. Right? Here, okay, 19th century lyrical ballads. Okay, or say the prelude, or you have Kubla Khan. When you are asked about the literature, what to write, when you are asked about the author, you don't forget to mention the three things, right? Those are the era, the genre, major literary text and in which style those major literary texts are presented. And when you are asked about the literature itself in this way, just provide the genre of the literature, who was the writer, when was it written, and what is the major feature, style. Or if you don't know those all things, just provide the brief summary of the plot or whatever the theme is there in the literature. But if you go it with the name of the author, era, and the prominent thing that the literature had done, see, like lyrical ballads, those lyrical ballads came as a shock to the generation, right? Because before the lyrical ballads, what was the convention? As we already talked, it was of the rational thinkings. Now lyrical ballads came celebrating the emotion and the petty things. Now see what happens? The world which was rational is now shocked. Okay? So this is what lyrical ballad did. If you could mention this type of prominent things that the literature did, then that will score you a good marks. Okay, if you don't know anything, just mention what is the theme here in the lyrical ballad, what is the theme in the Kubla Khan, who wrote it. So those things also work. But if you really want to score a very good marks, just mention when the literature was written, who was the writer, and what this writing did in its era. What was the prominent thing this writing brought with it in that era? Mention those things, okay? So from the 19th century we have Robert Southey, Don Juan. So these are from the 9th chapter. From the 10th one, later 19th century poets, you could be asked about Mary Shelley and Frankenstein. Shelley or Frankenstein. George Eliot, Kingsley, yes, Charles Kingsley, yes, Bronte Sisters, Jane Austen. These are the things you can, or some of the writings of these people you can get in your short notes. Let's say if you get Mary Shelley or Frankenstein, and this Frankenstein have been asked in long essay type question also. So let's talk briefly about it. Okay, what Mary Shelley did with the Frankenstein in this era is Frankenstein is a novel, okay? And this novel portrays a guy, a man called Victor. And this man, now what he does is, from the bones and the fleshes of the dead, he collects those, and in his room, what he does is he forms a monster. And that monster, now set loose, now starts chasing him and ruins everything on the way, finally killing the person who created this monster. And the monster vanishes in the fog at last, okay? Now what is Frankenstein, through the Frankenstein, Mary Shelley doing at the age, okay? The first thing she was doing is, what happened is Mary Shelley was married to a poet, P.B. Shelley. Now, what happened, in some of the critics say that when Mary Shelley gave birth to a baby, that baby died soon, after a couple of months after the birth. What happened is, her husband, in the name of romanticism or say nature admiration, what he did is he took that kid out into the bare nature, okay, and because of that this passed away, died, and now Mary Shelley is saying through the Frankenstein, challenging the notion that what happens if a man tries to be the mother? Man cannot be the mother, and now if man wants to challenge the womanhood, then this is the consequences. Everything will be ruined and destroyed. This is what Mary Shelley was trying to say through Frankenstein. Some of the critics say, as in Frankenstein we see that a guy is there and this guy created a monster, right? And this monster was produced by this man. And now the son of the man, he is the father, he is the mother, because he produced this monster in the laboratory, in the room, right? And now this monster destroyed everything, finally killing the one who gave him the life also, right? So what it means is, without the motherhood, if you go on with this sort of things, this will ruin everything. Actually, Frankenstein is the first brick in the fiction, in the line of fictions that is about the science fiction, okay? This is the first brick that was, say, dealing about the scientific fiction, science fictions. So if you mention this type of things, you will score good marks. If you don't know that, then just say Frankenstein written in which era? It was written in the 20th century. Is it so? Okay, you decide it. When was it written? And then written by Mary Shelley, where in a Frankenstein there a guy creates a monster, and this monster now set loose takes into a journey of revenge and destroys everything. This will also score you a marks, okay? But the level, the content, okay, varies, so the marks will also vary. You will get a pass mark, but not a good marks. But if you analyze it, what it did in its era, okay, it is the first science fiction. Mary Shelley did it, right? So these are the things that will give you a good or the better marks. Okay. So now let me talk about the story of Frankenstein in brief. What happens in Frankenstein is, there is a guy called Victor, and this Victor is a student of medical science, where he assembles or brings the bones, flesh, tissues and just puts it together and creates a big monster. Now this monster, once set loose, reaches to a forest and then observes a household. Now observing a household, what this monster sees is the family love between the parents, say the people, right? But when he tries to get there, people are afraid and they run away. So now he feels lack of, he doesn't have the love that he wanted for, and this now puts this monster into a revenge. Now this monster is very, say, negative towards his creator and now runs after him and finally destroys everything. So see, the first, it is the science fiction written by Mary Shelley. It can be said it is also a woman's response to the hegemony of man at the time. So this is how this moves. Okay, so we were in chapter 10, and after chapter 10, okay, let's talk in brief about the Bronte sisters too. The Gothic Romanticism, you just remember a term called Gothic Romanticism, okay? There's a famous book called Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Okay? What they did was, they presented the affairs of love, romance, but with the Gothic element. Okay? Okay, we'll discuss those things in detail. And now, coming to the next chapter, that is other 19th century, you'll have short notes on Thomas de Quincey. Thomas de Quincey, or his writing Confession of an English opium eater. Okay, anything can come. Or you have, say, the Darwin. This was the era when everything started changing. You know what Darwin did prominently? You mention about the Darwin, he published evolution, this and that. That will give you the pass mark, but not the good mark. If you mention what Darwin did is, before Darwin, people used to consider that we, man, are in the form of God. We are the sons of the God, son and daughters of the God himself. That was what people used to believe. But Darwin came and said, no, you are not the sons of God, and say, you are not the sons and daughters of the gods. Rather, you are descendant of an ape. So now see, this is the new thing that came into it. He dismantled the God, right? So now, these are the prominent things that happened here. Thomas de Quincey, see what is the topic? Confession of an English opium eater. Account of an addict who is addicted to opium, right? See, the account of addict, his diaries are also being addressed in this era. This was the era of change. The modern things started popping out, okay? Or say, you could be asked about Darwin or the origin of species. This is the same book that posits man as the descendant of the ape. He challenged the notion of the church or the conventional notion that man is the son of God and said, no, man is not the son of God. Rather, in the chain of evolution, man developed out from the ape, not from the God. Okay, that was what he challenged. Okay, or you say Matthew Arnold. He can be asked about Matthew Arnold. He can be asked about Ruskin, Samuel Butler. Ruskin. So these are the things that can come in chapter. And then you have another chapter, probably this is the one. Here you can be asked about Ulysses. Okay, this is the 20th century novel and prose. Here in 20th century novel and prose, you could be asked about Kipling, Rudyard Kipling. Okay, so 20th century, can be asked about Kipling, you can be asked about Ulysses. Now this is a story of a day, okay, we'll talk about it later. Or H.G. Wells, E.M. Forster, Passes to India. These are the things you can be asked. Or say George Orwell. From the next chapter after this, you have the 20th century drama. And 20th century drama is all about Beckett, Samuel Beckett, the theatre of absurd, okay? So here, let's say, Beckett can come here, or say Juno the playcock, 20th century drama. And in 20th century drama, you can have importance of being earnest, importance of being earnest. Okay, John Glassworthy, The Caretaker, Oscar Wilde, T.S. Eliot's poetic plays. So you can be asked about these things. And next, 20th century poetry. Now this is about Wilfred Owen. Okay, let's write his name first. Okay, 20th century poetry. Can be asked about Wilfred Owen. Can be asked about Hopkins. J.M. Hopkins. Can be asked about Auden. If you haven't read his Unknown Citizen, one of the best poetry. Okay, Robert Graves. Ted Hughes. The Westland. Okay, let's keep it up to this. Rupert Brooke. So these are the probable things that can pop up in your short note. Okay, so we'll be discussing these things in detail. And now, so you understand this, right? In short note, you can be asked about the writer or the specific literature, or say you can be asked about, as we did morality plays, miracle plays, and the interludes, you can be asked about the literary genre and their features or the technical terms. You can be asked about anything. Okay, so these are the things that can pop up in your short answer questions. Okay, now what about, don't worry, we will discuss about these answers also, but first let's deal about the questions. Now, from the long answer question, what are the things that can pop up into your examination from chapter 1? Okay, what could be the things that can pop up in chapter 1? So this I am not going to write, as in English if I start writing that will take a lot of time. Better you listen and jot it down yourself. Okay, so say, write an essay on Old English literature. Write an essay on Old English. For the long question, chapter 1, write an essay on Old English literature, or say Beowulf. This can pop up here. Okay, now coming to the Middle English, what could be the, okay, explain the prominent Features of Canterbury Tales. Canterbury Tales. Say they are given you the name of the writer, Geoffrey Chaucer. Okay. So this can be one of the long question. Okay, or describe, let me check the questions that have appeared in your examination. Okay, describe more the authors as an important work of, as an important work of Middle English. Okay. Okay, next, very good question. This is from chapter 2. Okay. How is the story telling organized in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales? Okay. So basic thing to understand here for the long answer question is that you can be asked different types of questions. Okay. First thing is they can ask you to justify. Like for example, Victorian era was the heyday of English novels. Justify. Okay. Old English literature, or say, let's take another way. Say about the drama also. Elizabethan, as we discussed already, Elizabethan period was the golden days for English drama. Justify. One type of question can be justified. Okay, that means you are given the argument, and now you have to justify this argument. This is the one type of question. Okay, or say you have the next type of question, that is explain, write an essay on Beowulf, write an essay on Old English literature, write an essay on Middle English literature, write an essay on the author as an important work of Middle English literature. So next type of question could be asked. One is justify. The next one is write an essay on. Write an essay on. Okay. So what could be the next type of question that can come in long question? Like another why questions we can see. Why? That is, why lyrical ballad came as a shock? Why lyrical ballad came as a shock? Why the publication of lyrical ballads came as a shock. Now see why. Again here you are supposed to justify. This is the same thing but asked in a different way. Write an essay can be asked, explain, write an essay on prominent features of Canterbury Tales, or explain the prominent features of Canterbury Tales, or describe the prominent features of Canterbury Tales. So it means sometimes you are asked to write argument, that is argumentative essay. Sometimes you are meant to write the descriptive essays. So here you have to write in different modes of essays when you are asked to justify certain statement. You are supposed to take that statement as your central argument and then keep on providing the supporting detail, okay, that supports this argument. That means you are going to write the argumentative essay. But here, when you are asked to explain, describe, what are you supposed to do? You are supposed to write the descriptive essay. So we dealt with this: justify, write an essay on, and then you have explain, describe, or then why questions, why this and that, okay. So these are the types of question. Okay, next question could be why 18th century is called the age of reason. Why 18th century is called the age of reason? Or this question can be asked in another mode. 18th century is called the age of reason. Justify. Now see, you are supposed to present your argument, okay. Or say, write an essay on 18th century literature. Write an essay on 18th century writers. So you have different types of questions here in the long answer question from this book, okay. You can be asked to justify the statement, write an essay on something, explain something, describe something, and or provide the reasons why something is like this. For example, say, we say, okay, let's take other examples. Say, describe Dickens as a novelist, Charles Dickens as a novelist, write an essay on Middle English literature. These are the questions you have been asked very frequently, okay. Let's deal with one of the long questions, okay. That is from the Victorian age. I ask you, we will deal with all the types of questions. Today, one of the long questions, that is from the Victorian age. So we understand in short answer question, we can be, in write notes, we can be asked about the literature or writer or the features of the literature or about the era itself. Anything can come. Or here, justify, why, describe, explain, write an essay on. These are the types of questions that can pop up in your long answer question. Let's say, let's take one question, okay. That is, Victorian era was the great age of English novels. Justify. Why is Victorian era the great age of English novels? This can be also the question, right? Okay. Or in description, you can be asked, describe the nobles, prominent nobles of Victorian age, describe the Victorian novels, okay? These are the things that can pop up in your examination. Now let's see. Victorian era was the great age of English novels. Why was it called the great age of English novels? Let's talk. What is the era? Victorian age is from mid 19th to early 20th, just at the entry of the 20th. So this was the Victorian era. Now what happened in this era? The very prominent things in this era. This era, the railroad, right? And next is, we know how to make a ROF, right? We are making a ROF for this question. Those are what happened? This is the era from 1832 to 1901. Now what happened in this era? Railroad was developed, urbanization was there, even telegraph. Okay, this telegraph, the advent of telegraph changed the way news behaved in that era. Now the news was circulating very fast. Okay, now this what urbanization did? Population increased, right? People from village migrated to cities. Now big cities and towns were developed throughout the London, right? So these are the major things that happened in this era. Okay. Another prominent, very prominent thing is mechanization of printing press. Mechanization of printing press. What happened is, before the printing press was not mechanized. Now steam powered printing presses were there. The publications like Longman, Macmillan, these firms were in competition in Britain, in London. So now the next thing what happened in this era is there was a tax, say stamp tax on the papers. Now that stamp tax was lifted off. Okay, now this made the newspapers cheap. The another thing is railroad. Now because of this railroad, the culture of having the libraries, book stalls, booksellers, publishers, they flourished. We still go to India and you see book stalls in railway platforms. You see people carrying those books and selling, or you see the stationery, say the shop there. Why is that? That is because it's because of the British culture. In the railroad, this say the way of reading changed. Okay, booksellers and publishers started benefiting. You travel on a rail, right? You have a journey, long journey, or say of 2 nights or 3 nights. What do? You take a book, you keep on reading. So this way the reading culture also flourished. Also the mechanization of printing press. You know, the major thing that happened in this era was, there was, I forget the name of the journal. Actually it was, say this guy, okay, let me check this out. Yes, Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens, actually what he started doing is, let's see, series of stories are being published, started being published in this era, actually through the newspapers. Newspapers come with the story, now there is a gap, and again in next issue it comes with the continued story. This is how these series started being published in this era. Okay, so what this give is a reading culture, right? So now what happened in this area is, that is the Pickwick paper. Okay, the Pickwick paper. So because all of this modernization, say the development in science and technology and communication happened in this era, and because of this the culture of reading, writing, or say the book culture changed. Okay, and the next thing of novel being prominent in this era is, when I say you romance, what comes to your mind? When we talk, we say romance, what comes to the mind? Definitely what comes to mind is marvelous and uncommon incidents. Romance, that is marvelous, uncommon incidents. And when I say novel, what do you see? Ordinary train of events, right? A story of a people, life of the ordinary people, right? So these developments actually brought the change in the life of the people. Their life were more complex. There were many different vignettes inside the life, and all these things were portrayed through the novel, experimenting in the character. Even the double plot or the triple plot structure appeared. Inside a plot, say you have a novel, and inside that you have a plot. And inside that plot again you will have another plot. So subplot. This also happened in this era. The complexity of life, the absurdity of the life, those were very clearly presented through the novels. Novels were capable enough to bring down the problem of urbanization, the problem of the cities, the problem of the consumer economy, the mass culture. So these problems were all portrayed in the novel. Not only this, there we see a varieties of genre of novels in this era. You say novel of family type, you see Jane Austen, right? You see romance with Emily Bronte's Gothic romance, Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. You see historical novels like Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities. Now you see the stories of adventures, okay? Exploration. Not only these things, but also the personal experiences start coming, okay? The stories of love and passion. What happens in Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte is there is a guy called Heathcliff, and this Heathcliff is in love with Catherine. Now what happens is this Catherine marries another man, okay? And this Catherine dies, and Heathcliff now starts sleeping in the grave of the Catherine. You see Gothic element there, right? But still that Gothic element is with the love and romance there. So you see the variety of genres here. Novel of family life, novel of romance, novel of historical novels, even the personal experiences, love and passion, right? These things started coming into the genre. This is why this period is called the Great Age of English novels. Great novelists like Emily Bronte, those Bronte sisters, Jane Austen, even Charles Dickens, they pop up in this era. Not only with a very limited line of novels, but with a vast array, the diversity of novels in this era. So thank you for today, and tomorrow again we will be talking about few of the questions from the same book, short answer questions and long answer questions. Then we will move to the another text. Thank you, class.